5 habits that are preventing you from healing your chronic pain and symptoms. Number 1, negative thinking about your pain or symptoms. This is really common when we have debilitating chronic pain or chronic symptoms. We have all these unpleasant sensations within, and it dysregulates our nervous system. Or before we even had chronic pain or symptoms, our nervous system was very dysregulated, resulting in our pain or symptoms being triggered or being perpetuated. But in either case, whether you're dysregulated beforehand or your pain and symptoms are even dysregulating you further, story follows state here. So the more you're dysregulated inside, the more the story in your mind gets skewed with this negative lens. And so we have all this negative thinking about our physical symptoms. Perhaps you're telling yourself, my body's permanently damaged. I'm never going to get better. I'm not doing the brain and nervous system approach properly. I'm messing it up. These symptoms are too much for me to handle. I can't tolerate attending to them. No matter what your negative thinking is, the more you have negative thinking, the more your brain thinks, oh, I'm actually in danger. There's something really wrong with the body, and it just perpetuates our chronic pain, chronic symptoms forward. So different types of negative thinking are commonly triggering symptoms in my experience. This is things like fear thoughts or worrying, catastrophizing, thinking in worst case scenarios about your body or your pain. This could be things like obsessive thinking. When I was in chronic pain, I was thinking about my pain 80, 90% of the day. And it was like my whole world became revolved around my chronic pain or chronic symptoms. Other types of negative thinking could be despairing thoughts, angry thoughts, self-critical thoughts. All this type of negative thinking, as I've said, it's going to cause you to become even more dysregulated and continue having your brain trigger chronic pain or chronic symptoms. And so this is the first habit that will keep you stuck. And there's not an easy solution. I want to be clear. When we talk about thinking's tricky to work on. Our thoughts trick us into getting bought into them, and the brain becomes so familiar in the brain that you're just drawn to them perpetually. But we can shift this. I've helped so many people overcome their negative thinking, whether it's in my individual work with clients or in my digital course. And I've seen people change the way they think over time and regulate their nervous system. And as a result, their pain or symptoms reduce. To get you started for free, I have a Messages of Safety 101 video. And there's a good practice in there where we're practicing giving messages of safety. So instead of having these negative thinking patterns, we're starting to have safer ways of thinking about our body, our pain or symptoms, or about our life. So if you're struggling with negative thinking, check that video up. I'll put it up above and down below. Number 2, avoiding emotions. The second habit that will keep you in chronic pain, chronic symptoms is the avoidance of emotions. People get the equation wrong. They think that, stress, difficult emotions equals chronic pain or chronic symptoms. But that equation is not correct. You're a human being. And long after you recover from your pain and symptoms, and I do believe you can, you're going to have difficult emotions. You're going to have dysregulation. And you can learn to have that without having chronic symptoms. The equation that will actually worsen your pain or symptoms and keep it going is when you have difficult emotions and then you have resistance. And when you have that resistance, it's going to dysregulate you further and trigger chronic pain, chronic symptoms. There's several studies showing this connection. And so resisting emotions often looks like using some type of avoidance. So I made a useful slide here that I want you to look at because there's a lot of ways we can avoid our emotions. And this comes from some of the great work by Dr. Schubiner and Dr. Lumley. And so behavioral avoidance, this could be talking through emotions. And what I mean by this is that you're not talking about emotions or processing. What people do is they start to feel emotions and they just talk quicker. They talk more. They talk about various topics. They're just trying to stay busy avoiding their emotional state. This could look like changing the topic. So if you're in a conversation, you're having some emotions take place, you just change the topic quickly. I was really prone to doing this type of avoidance. When I'd be in emotional conversations, I would just change the topic to something that felt safer. It could be controlling the situation, using alcohol, substances, food, media, or shopping. So this is really common in terms of how people avoid, especially drugs or alcohol. I know I was prone and recovered from drug and alcohol use, and it was a clear way that I was using these substances to avoid my difficult emotions and emotional state. I've also seen people use exercises or certain activities to basically avoid. Now, I'm all for exercise and moving your body, but I've seen people use exercise or hobbies and different things as a way to just avoid feeling what they're feeling. It could be using humor or laughter. This is something that drives my partner nuts when I tend to use it quite often, is I'll just naturally shift to using this humor or making light of a situation. I've also seen people turning their anger inward and they start to become self-critical. Behaviors such as people-pleasing or perfectionism and avoiding people, places, or objects. Now, there's also mental avoidance. This could be invalidating. You're never going to allow yourself to feel safe with emotions or actually feel emotions if you just invalidate them. You tell yourself, I shouldn't feel this way. Other people don't feel this way. Get over it, move on, push through. I've also seen people thinking without stopping to notice what's being felt. So they're just lost in their mind in this negative loop, and they're not actually stopping to feel what they're feeling in their body. Another thing that happens is trying to stay positive. Toxic positivity. I'm also all for positive thinking and emotions. That's great. But people try to stay toxically positive to avoid fear or anger or sadness or hurts. Denying or downplaying issues is really common. Fantasizing or daydreaming. Obsessively thinking about other things, such as our pain. This could definitely be a defense avoidance behavior that can happen. Focusing on pain and symptoms, as I've just said, and not remembering certain experiences. Whether we're purposefully not remembering them or the brain just has this defense and shuts things off. So as you can see, there's lots of ways we avoid our emotional state. We live in a society that thrives on cutting us off from our body and our emotional state. We just stay in our head thinking or stay doing in the outside world. But to recover, we need to learn to approach emotions, be with them, sit with them in the body. I have 2 useful practices that I'll put up above and down below. One for sadness. If you're struggling to feel sadness, this is a great free practice. It actually comes from my digital course, The Somatic Safety Method. If you need extra support, I have about 15 emotional practices in that digital course that you can check out. I also have a free anxiety practice on this channel. It has a little bit of movement to it, but if you're not there in your journey, you could skip the movement piece, but I'll link that to the top and put it down below as well. We need to start approaching emotions, experiencing them, learning to release them, move through them, and eventually, this is a topic for another day, learn to express them outwardly to other people. Number 3, lack of movement. For a lot of us, when we have chronic pain, chronic symptoms, the natural response is starting to avoid movement, positions, activities that we think are triggering our symptoms. And so what will happen to people is they shrink their world. They shrink their movements, their activities, sports that they're playing, and we become immobile. We become frozen. And movement is medicine here. So this lack of movement is one of the biggest reasons I see people's chronic pain, chronic symptoms becoming perpetuated. because movement is medicine. We need movement to show our brain that our body's actually physically safe, we're okay, that our brain is just caught in this survival loop producing our symptoms. And so the more you resist movement and avoid it, the more the brain learns, oh, there's something really wrong with the body, I'm in danger, I'll keep triggering pain. The other thing about lack of movement is it's going to cause a lot of dysregulation. As human beings, we were meant to move. We were. And I know there's some people that have certain disorders where that's not possible, but for the most part, we evolved to move. So moving brings about positive emotions. It helps us move through emotion, release it, and it helps our nervous system stay regulated and reduce states of fight, flight, freeze, or shutdown. So for these two reasons, this lack of movement is going to keep you stuck. It's going to keep your nervous system dysregulated. And the other thing that's going to happen is your brain's going to keep thinking the body's permanently damaged and just keep that pain or symptom switch on in the brain. And so starting to approach movements is essential. Now, I want to mention here, gradual. We want to gradually approach movements or activities again. Don't go 0 to 100. Even if your pain or symptoms are neuroplastic, your brain's going to panic. It's going to be too much. For myself, I was basically bedbound or housebound by the end of my journey. And I started a brain and nervous system approach. And it took me about 8 months. It seems like a long time, but it took me 8 months from going to basically not moving to fully working out and moving my body. And if you want a step-by-step guide of how to start to move your body and teach your brain that you're safe, I'll link that to the top and put it down below. This is a video on 6 strategies for breaking conditioned responses. So conditioned responses basically are when movements and pain or symptoms or activity and pain or symptoms gets linked mistakenly. And we can break these apart. We can start to move our body and teach our brain that we're safe to do this. So I do believe in you. Start to work away at it. If you need support, I am also starting to run a Qigong group. Qigong involves slow movements, breathing, regulation. In that group, there's also going to be a lot of somatic work with pain, emotions, dysregulation. It runs for an hour every Friday morning at 9 a.m. Mountain Time or Calgary time. This is available worldwide. Qigong's great because it keeps us really regulated and it keeps us intentional as we start to move our body again. So if you need some support, that group, I've made it really affordable. It's $20 Canadian plus tax per class. So I really wanted to open it up to the world, make it available. So if people want support in staying regulated as they start to move their body, Qigong can be a good start. And if not, that's okay. Check out that video on 6 strategies to break conditioned responses, because as we start to move our body, our brain is going to learn, okay, we're actually safe to do this. And as that happens, your pain and symptoms will start to come down. So keep going with the healing work and start to move that body. Number 4, avoiding living life. We just talked about how lack of movement is a danger signal to the brain, keeping you in pain and symptoms. Avoidance of living life is also a danger signal to your brain, and it's going to keep you stuck. It's one of the main habits that I'll see people engaging in, which results in their pain and symptoms not actually lowering. Lots of people, they have this equation where they think, okay, I'm going to use all this brain and nervous system approach, all these strategies that Tanner offers on the channel, and I'm going to do them. And then once my pain's lower or is lowered or is gone away completely, then I'll start living life. That's not how this works. What happens, and I've worked with so many people where this is the case, and it was the case for me, is you start to widen your world. You start to approach living life again. And as a result, your pain starts to reduce. So don't wait for your pain to start to reduce to start inching your way into living life more. I always give people the task of do one thing each day to make your life bigger and your symptoms smaller. One thing I talk about is purposeful action. We need to start to take purposeful action based on values, passions, creativity. And by doing this, we actually start to breed a sense of safety in our life. And safety is the key to healing chronic pain, chronic symptoms. So actually starting to approach life, have purposeful action is truly going to help you heal. I have lots of fancy strategies, but actually starting to live life and enjoy your life and do the things you're passionate about, you're interested about, it's going to help you heal. I promise you. And so I have a whole podcast episode on purposeful action. I'll link it to the top and put it down below. Check that episode out. There's a lot of useful information in there to get you started and actually starting to approach your life and live more fully. And number 5, high pressure. Pressure and chronic pain, chronic symptoms, they are best friends. High pressure can look like excessive expectations on yourself, being critical of yourself, being busy all the time, putting more and more things into your day, always being in an urgent fight or flight state, and just pushing yourself with this critical lens. Whether you're doing this just in your life in general, or whether you're doing this about your healing work, high pressure is a habit that will keep you having chronic pain, chronic symptoms in the long run. We need to learn to live life differently. We need to learn to heal differently. You cannot heal by putting all this pressure on yourself and staying in fight or flight. So catch yourself today as if you're doing this. Catch yourself when you're getting urgent. Catch yourself when you're starting to have actions based on fight or flight. Catch yourself making all these plans and jamming more into your day. Practice taking a few things out of your day, taking a few healing practices out. Give yourself space for free time, for rest, and really slow down your movements, your speech, and your actions. By doing some of these simple steps, we can actually start to lower the pressure that we're placing on ourselves. So I hope this video was helpful. Please put your questions or comments down below. Hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and I will talk to you all soon. Take care.